It was with those little hands that my 6-year-old granddaughter destroyed 25 years of my marriage with just one sentence. And today, I thank God for it every single day. Good afternoon. My name is Eleanor Sullivan. I'm 86 years old, and I'm going to tell you a story I've kept in my heart for a long time. Before I begin, if you could, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Where are you watching from? Comment below. I love knowing that people from all across America are listening to my stories. I was born in 1939 in a small town called Pine Ridge in rural Kentucky. It was the kind of place where everybody knew everybody, where news traveled faster than rainwater in a storm. My father had a small farm where he grew a little bit of everything, and my mother, besides helping with the crops, did sewing work for others. I grew up believing a woman's destiny was to marry, have children, and take care of the home. There weren't many options for girls like me back then. I only studied until 4th grade because the school was far away, and my father said women didn't need much education, just a good husband. His words, not mine. At 18, in 1957, I met Frank at a church dance. He was a handsome, hard-working man, 5 years older than me. He had a confident way of speaking, an easy smile that won me over. After 6 months of dating, always with my mother as a chaperone, because decent girls didn't stay alone with boys, we got married. The celebration was simple, in my parents' backyard. I wore the dress my mother had spent months sewing, saving every penny to buy good fabric. Frank wore a suit borrowed from his brother-in-law. We were poor but full of dreams. At first, we lived in a small room at the back of his mother's house while we saved money. Frank worked as a construction helper and on weekends sold vegetables at an improvised stand in the church square. I took in laundry and cleaned houses for the wealthier families in town. Our first daughter, Susan, arrived when I was 19 in 1958. It was a difficult home birth with Miss Martha, the midwife. I nearly passed away, but God wanted me to stay to tell this story. Then came Kevin in 1960, and our youngest, Tommy, in 1963. Life was hard, but we managed. With the money my father left me when he passed away in 1965, we bought a small piece of land on the outskirts of town. It was a property with a simple house, but it was ours. There we planted everything: potatoes, corn, beans, and we had some chickens and a few pigs. Frank had the idea to expand our stand at the farmer's market that had started operating in town. Every Saturday, he would leave at dawn, around 5 a.m., to set things up and secure a good spot. Over time, our little stand grew. We sold not only what we grew, but bought from other producers to resell. I stayed home taking care of the children, the garden, the animals, and preparing preserves that we also sold: pickled cucumbers, beets, carrots. Despite the hard work, I felt fulfilled. We had our little house. Our children were growing strong and healthy. The business was doing well. Back then, being a good wife meant not questioning your husband, blindly trusting him, and making sure he always had clean clothes, food on the table, and a tidy house. And I did all this with a smile on my face, believing I was building a good life for my family. The years went by. Susan, our oldest daughter, was a beautiful girl, but temperamental. She had her father's easy smile and my stubborn ways. At 17, in 1975, she fell in love with David, the pharmacist's son. A handsome, educated young man, but with a reputation as a partier. Frank and I didn't really approve of the relationship, but Susan always did what she wanted. One Sunday afternoon, she came home crying. She was pregnant. When David found out, he wanted to disappear. It was Frank, my husband, who went after him and, as they said back then, made him do right by her. They got married in a hurry, in a small ceremony, nothing like what I had dreamed for my daughter. Melissa was born in 1976, a beautiful child with her grandfather's large eyes and her mother's stubborn chin. Susan and David's marriage, as many had predicted, wasn't the happiest. He drank, went out with friends, came home late. She worked as a clerk in her father-in-law's pharmacy to help with expenses. To lighten my daughter's burden, Melissa spent a lot of time with us. From a young age, she was very attached to her grandfather. Frank spoiled her, took her everywhere, bought her candy behind my back. I even complained that he was ruining the girl, but deep down, I thought his love was beautiful. On Saturdays sometimes, Frank would take Melissa to the farmer's market. She loved the hustle and bustle, the colors, the smells. She'd run between the stands, knew all the vendors by name. She'd come back home dirty with soil, hands sticky with candy, happy as could be. In 1982, I was 43, Frank was 48. Our younger sons were already making their way in life. Kevin had gone to Detroit to work in an automobile factory. Tommy was studying accounting in a neighboring town. He only came home on weekends. Life was following its quiet course. At least that's what I thought. I was one of those women who think they know everything about their husbands. 25 years of marriage gave me that confidence. I knew every expression of Frank's, every mood, every taste, or thought I did. At the farmer's market, besides our stand, there were many others: vegetables, fruits, meats, fish, and also flowers. The flower stand had arrived about 3 years ago when Rose moved to our town. She was a beautiful woman, in her early 30s, a widow, they said. She had long black hair, always well-groomed. She wore red lipstick even in a town where women barely put on powder to go to church on Sunday. Rose sold flowers that she grew herself on rented land at the edge of town. Roses, daisies, lilies, chrysanthemums, beautiful arrangements that ladies bought to decorate their Sunday tables or to take to the cemetery. I was always friendly with her. I'd bring her coffee when I visited Frank at the market. Sometimes we exchanged recipes. I even gave her cuttings from some plants I had in my yard. I felt sorry for her, a woman alone, widowed. At least that's what everyone said. It was a Saturday like any other, in June of 1982. Frank had left early as always. The previous week, Melissa had gone with him to the market because she was staying with us for a few days. I was at home preparing lunch, waiting for the two of them to return around noon, as usual. I heard the noise of Frank's small truck arriving. Melissa came running in, as she always did, full of stories to tell. She sat on the small stool near the wood stove while I was peeling potatoes. "Grandma, the market was so busy today. Grandpa sold everything, even those big pumpkins you thought nobody would want." I smiled, continuing to prepare lunch. Melissa swung her little legs, eating a piece of cheese I had cut for her. "And you know what I got? A huge lollipop that Mr. Mario from the candy stand gave me. Grandpa wouldn't let me eat it because he said it would ruin my teeth, but it's saved in my little bag for later." I laughed at that talkative way of hers, so similar to her mother's at the same age. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Of course, my dear. What do you want to know?" And then came the sentence that changed my life forever. "Why does Grandpa kiss the flower lady on the mouth like they do on TV shows? Mommy says kisses on the mouth are only for married people, like her and Daddy." My world stopped. The knife I was holding fell to the floor. I looked at that 6-year-old child with innocent eyes, not understanding the weight of what she had just revealed. "What do you mean, Melissa? What did you see?" "I saw when we were leaving. Grandpa said I could go play with Joey, Mrs. Irene's son from the cheese stand, but I wanted to see Rose's flowers. She always gives me a little flower when she sees me. So I went over there, but she wasn't at the stand. She was in the back, where they keep things, you know, and Grandpa was there with her." My heart raced. I tried to stay calm, not to show the turmoil forming inside me. "And what were they doing, Melissa?" "They were hugging, and then Grandpa gave her a kiss on the mouth, just like the actor does with the leading lady on the TV show that Mommy watches. I thought it was weird because you weren't there, and Mommy says kisses on the mouth are only for married people." I don't know how I managed to finish making lunch that day. I served the food. Frank ate as if nothing had happened. He talked about the news from the market, said we had sold everything. I could barely look at him. The food on my plate remained untouched. After lunch, I sent Melissa to play in the yard. She went out skipping, with no idea of the storm she had caused. I sat at the table, looking at my husband of 25 years, a man I thought I knew better than myself, and suddenly realized I was facing a stranger. That afternoon, while Melissa played in the yard, I sat in the kitchen as if I had turned to stone. I couldn't move, couldn't cry. It was like a hole had opened up inside my chest. 25 years, 25 years believing in a lie. I thought about confronting Frank immediately, but something held me back. I needed to be sure. After all, it could be a child's imagination, right? Melissa was little. Maybe she had confused things. Maybe she had seen her father, David, with another woman, and in her mind, mixed up the people. I clung to any explanation that wasn't the obvious one. During the rest of that Saturday, I observed Frank, like someone observing a strange insect. Every gesture, every word, every look. I searched for signs that would confirm or deny what Melissa had said. He seemed the same as always. He sat on the porch to listen to the game on the radio, had his coffee in the afternoon, talked with the neighbor about the fence that needed fixing. How could he act so normally if he was cheating on his wife? At night, after Melissa went to sleep, I went through his things. I had never done this before. In 25 years of marriage, I had never searched Frank's pockets. I had never doubted his word. But that night, I went through everything. In the pocket of a pair of pants, I found a folded paper, a receipt from a jewelry store in the next town over, a silver bracelet purchased 2 weeks earlier. I had never received any bracelet. Sunday, I could barely sleep. My head was buzzing with thoughts, memories. I started to piece together things I hadn't noticed before. Frank coming back later and later from the market in recent years. Shirts with different perfume that he said was from the deodorant he used. The money that seemed to stretch less, despite sales being good, according to him. Small lies that I had accepted without questioning. On Monday, after Frank left to take care of some business in town, I picked up the phone and called my friend Beth. She had a spice and herb stand at the market, very close to ours. If something was happening, she would know. With my heart in my hand, I asked if she had noticed anything strange between my husband and Rose. The silence on the other end of the line was answer enough. "Eleanor, my friend," she began hesitantly. "I tried to tell you so many times, but you seemed so happy, so confident. I didn't have the courage." Her words fell on me like a stone. It wasn't just a kiss that Melissa had seen by chance. It was an affair that had been going on for years. 3 years, according to Beth. Since Rose had come to town, everyone knew. Everyone whispered behind my back. The betrayed wife is always the last to know. That night when Frank got home, I had already cried all the tears I had to cry. I was sitting in the dark living room. He came in, turned on the light, and was startled to find me there. "Woman, you scared me. What are you doing sitting in the dark? Where's dinner?" I looked at him, at that face I knew so well, and that now seemed like a stranger's. "There's no dinner tonight, Frank, but we do have a conversation. Sit down." He must have noticed something in my tone of voice because he didn't protest. He sat in the chair across from me with a suspicious look. "What's wrong, Eleanor? Did something happen?" "Melissa told me something interesting on Saturday. She said she saw you kissing Rose at the market behind her stand. Just like on TV shows, is what she said." His face paled. Then came the denial, as I expected. "That's nonsense from children, Ellie. The girl saw something wrong, made it up. You know how kids that age are. They make up all kinds of stories." "Don't lie to me, Frank. Not anymore. I spoke with Beth today. She told me everything." 3 years, Frank. 3 years making a fool out of me." He tried to deny it once more, but when he saw my look, when he realized I really knew, the mask fell. It was like seeing another person emerge before me. His face hardened, his voice changed. "So what? What are you going to do? Scream, cry, kick me out of the house?" That coldness caught me by surprise. Where was the man with whom I had shared my life for 25 years? The father of my children, the companion I thought I had? "I want to know why, Frank. Why do this to me after so many years?" He gave a dry laugh that cut me like a knife. You really want to know, Eleanor? Because Rose makes me feel alive. She's young, beautiful, full of life. Not a housewife covered in varicose veins who only knows how to talk about the kids and the garden. Each word was like a slap. I had devoted my life to that man, to that family, had given up my dreams, and yes, I had dreams, even if they were small, to be a wife and mother. And now he threw that in my face, as if it were a flaw. It's been a long time since this was a real marriage, Eleanor. It's just convenience. You take care of the house. I bring in the money. But love, passion, that ended a long time ago. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. For me, our marriage was solid. Maybe it no longer had the fire of the early years, but it was based on companionship, respect, building together. At least that's what I believed. If that's how you feel, why didn't you ask for a divorce? Why live this lie? He shrugged, as if it wasn't a big deal. Divorce is a hassle. And what would people say? Respectable Mr. Frank leaving his wife after so many years? My reputation in town would go down the drain, business would suffer. So that was it. It wasn't out of consideration for me. It wasn't for the children. It was for convenience, for appearances, for money. And how much longer did you plan to live this lie? That's when he gave me the final blow. Actually, I was going to tell you soon. I bought a little house for Rose in the next town. We're thinking of moving there at the end of the year. I felt my heart stop. It wasn't just an affair, an adventure. He really planned to leave me and start another life. And he had only not done it yet out of convenience. What house? With what money? His silence was revealing. A chill ran down my spine. You sold part of our land, didn't you? That part beyond the creek, that we hardly use. His look confirmed my suspicion. He had sold a property that was ours, that we had bought with so much sacrifice without telling me anything, to buy a house for his mistress. You had no right to do that, Frank. That land is ours. It's the future of our children. That's when he stood up, his face red with anger. I have every right. I'm the one who works in this family. I'm the one who carries the weight on my shoulders. You stay at home cooking and gossiping with your friends while I slave away from Monday to Saturday to support everyone. That was too much. 25 years being diminished, belittled. 25 years believing that my work at home, taking care of the children, the garden, the animals, making preserves, sewing, wasn't as important as his. 25 years accepting that he was the head of the family because he was the one who brought money home. You really think I don't work, Frank? Who woke up at dawn to nurse the children while you snored? Who plants, harvests, cleans, cooks, sews? Who makes the preserves that you sell at the market? Who takes care of everything so that you can leave the house every day with a clean shirt and a full stomach? He made a dismissive gesture with his hand, as if shooing away a fly. That's not real work, Eleanor. Any woman does that. At that moment, something broke inside me. It wasn't just the pain of betrayal, the humiliation of discovering that everyone knew except me. It was the realization that I had spent my entire life believing I was worth less, that my work, my sacrifices, didn't have the same value as his. Get out of my house, Frank, now. He laughed incredulously. Your house? This house is mine. I bought it. I built it. You have nothing, Eleanor. Nothing. That's when the back door slammed. It was Tommy, our youngest son, who had come to spend the week at home. He stood at the kitchen door, looking from one to the other, trying to understand what was happening. What's going on here? Why are you shouting? Frank tried to cover it up, said it was just a silly argument, just husband and wife stuff. But I wasn't going to cover up his lies anymore. Your father has been having an affair with Rose from the flower stand for 3 years. Frank sold that land beyond the creek to buy a house for her. He was planning to leave us at the end of the year. My son's face transformed. I saw the disbelief, then the understanding, and finally the anger taking over him. Tommy had always been the closest to his father, the one who admired him the most. Seeing that idol crumble before him must have been devastating. Is that true, Dad? Frank mumbled something, tried to deny it, but his look gave everything away. Tommy advanced a few steps, his fists clenched. "Answer, Dad. Is it true that you cheated on Mom, that you sold our land behind our backs?" Cornered, Frank finally confessed. He said yes, that he was with Rose, that he had sold the land, but that I had my share of blame because I was no longer the woman he had fallen in love with, that I had stopped taking care of myself, stopped being interesting, that he felt suffocated. It was too much for Tommy. My 19-year-old son, always so controlled, exploded like I had never seen before. "Shut up, Dad. Mom gave her life for us, for you. While you were out having fun with that woman, she was here taking care of everything, working herself to death." Frank tried to impose himself, as he always did. He raised his voice, said his son had no right to talk to him like that as long as he lived under his roof, he had to respect his decisions. "You don't deserve respect," shouted Tommy. "A man who cheats on his wife, who lies to his children, who steals from his own family to give to a mistress, doesn't deserve respect." I saw Frank's arm rise, ready to hit Tommy, as he had done a few times when he was younger. But my son was no longer a boy. He was a man almost the size of his father. He grabbed Frank's arm in midair with force. "Never again, Dad. Never again do you raise a hand to me or my mother." That night was a nightmare. Shouting, accusations, crying. Frank took some clothes and left, slamming the door. He said he was going to Rose's house, that he would return the next day to get the rest of his things, that I would regret making that scene, that without him I was nothing, that I would end up begging on my knees for him to come back. I stayed awake all night, sitting in the kitchen, staring at nothing. Tommy sat with me for a while, tried to comfort me, said everything would be all right, but how could it be all right? My marriage was over, my life was over. Or at least that's what I thought on that dark June night of 1982. I didn't know yet, but that terrible night would be the beginning of my true life. The next morning, after that terrible night, I woke up with a decision made. I had barely slept, but my mind was strangely clear. While preparing coffee, an idea began to form in my head. A crazy, frightening idea, but one that wouldn't leave me. Tommy came into the kitchen, deep dark circles showing he too had spent the night awake. "Mom, are you okay?" I served him coffee and sat at the table. "Tommy, I need to ask you a favor. Can you go talk to Uncle Joe? Ask him to come here with his truck tomorrow at dawn, around 4 o'clock. My son looked at me confused. "What are you planning to do, Mom?" "I'm going to work at the market tomorrow, in your father's place." The astonishment on his face was understandable. In 25 years, I had never worked at the market. I helped prepare everything at home, of course, planted, harvested, made preserves. But the one who sold, who negotiated, who appeared, was always Frank. "Are you sure about this? Dad's going to be furious." "Let him be. The stand is ours, Tommy. It was with my father's money that we started everything. If your father can sell our land behind my back, I can very well take over our business at the market." I saw a glimmer of admiration in my son's eyes. Maybe it was the first time he saw me as something beyond the submissive wife who always accepted her husband's decisions. Frank showed up around noon, as he had said. He came to get his things. He entered the house as if he owned it, ignoring my presence and Tommy's. He started to gather his clothes, his personal belongings. Before leaving, he looked at me with contempt. "You'll regret this, Eleanor. Give it a week and you'll be begging me to come back." I raised my chin, sustaining his gaze. "I already regret, Frank. I regret believing in you for so many years." When the door slammed behind him, I felt a mixture of pain and relief. It was as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders, a weight I didn't even know I was carrying. That afternoon, I called Susan to talk. I needed her to come get Melissa. I didn't want my granddaughter to witness this situation. I didn't want her to feel guilty for revealing the truth about her grandfather. When Susan arrived, I told her everything. She was shocked, not by the betrayal itself. I later found out that she and others in town already suspected, but by my decision to take over the stand at the market. "Mom, you've never worked outside the home. How are you going to manage a stand at the market? Leave it to Dad. You guys will work things out later. There's no working out, Susan. Your father had already decided to leave me. He had even bought a house for that woman with the money from our land. He was just waiting for the right moment, maybe after Tommy finished his studies. But Mom, you'll be embarrassed. Everyone in town already knows about this story. Gossip spreads. Embarrassed? What your father did is embarrassing. I'm not ashamed to work, to fight for what's mine, for my children's future. She looked at me with a mixture of admiration and concern. Susan had always looked the most like me in appearance, but in temperament she took after her father, impulsive, stubborn. Do you know what you're doing? It's going to be hard, Mom. People will talk, they'll laugh. Let them talk, let them laugh. I've survived worse things in this life. At dawn on Monday, at 4 o'clock, Uncle Joe stopped his truck in front of the house, helped load the boxes of vegetables, fruits, the preserves I had prepared. Tommy came along, said he would help me on this first day. When we arrived at the market, it was still dark. The vendors were arriving little by little, setting up their stands. I saw the looks, heard the whispers. Everyone already knew, of course. In a small town like ours, news like this spread like wildfire. I set up the stand in the usual place. I arranged everything as I had seen Frank do so many times. Pumpkins on one side, vegetables on the other, preserves prominently displayed. I put on the apron I had made the night before with my name embroidered on it, Eleanor. The first customers started arriving around 6 o'clock. Some averted their eyes, embarrassed. Others looked with curiosity, perhaps expecting me to be downcast, tearful. There were those who walked straight past my stand, preferring to buy elsewhere rather than have to talk to me. The shame of the betrayed wife is contagious, it seems. Around 7:30, I saw Frank entering the market. He stopped a few meters from the stand, his face red with anger. He didn't expect to see me there, occupying his place. He came toward me with large steps. What do you think you're doing, Eleanor? Working, Frank. Something I've always done, only now I'm doing it here in front of everyone, not hidden inside the house. This stand is mine. This business is mine. Ours, Frank. Ours. Or did you forget that it was with my father's money that we bought the first piece of land? That it's my hands that plant, harvest, make the preserves that you sell here? He looked around, realizing that people were watching. He lowered his voice, but the threatening tone remained. You're going to regret this, Eleanor. I'll sue you. I'll take everything from you. I looked into his eyes, those eyes that I once thought were so beautiful, so sincere, and felt nothing but pity. You can try, Frank, but in the meantime, I'll be here every day selling the fruit of my labor. He left, stomping under the curious gazes of the other vendors and customers. I noticed that some looked at me with new respect. A woman approached the stand, a lady I knew by sight, the owner of a grocery store in town. Mrs. Sullivan, I wanted 10 dozens of those free-range eggs you sell, and also 2 boxes of tomatoes, if you have them. It was a big order, larger than she usually made when Frank was at the stand. I understood the silent message. It was a gesture of solidarity from one woman to another. Of course, Mrs. Wilson, and I'll add 2 jars of that spicy jelly you like, on the house. That's how my new life began. It wasn't easy, far from it. In the first few months, I faced all kinds of difficulties. People who stopped buying at my stand because they believed Frank's version, that I had gone crazy, that I had kicked him out of the house out of unfounded jealousy. Suppliers who didn't want to deal with me because I was a woman, because they thought I didn't understand business. The loneliness of coming home after an exhausting day of work to find an empty house without the husband who, despite everything, had been my companion for 25 years. Frank really tried to sue me, as he had threatened. He got a lawyer in the next town. He filed for divorce, claiming abandonment. Imagine that. He abandoned me, and then accused me of abandoning him. He wanted half of everything, including the house we had built together. But I wasn't alone either. Tommy got a lawyer for me, a colleague of a friend's brother from college, a young, idealistic man who embraced my cause. The legal battle lasted months. Frank tried everything. He said I was unbalanced, that I mistreated him, that I was a terrible wife who refused to fulfill her conjugal duties. In the end, the judge determined the division of assets. He got the money from the sale of the land, which he had already spent on Rose anyway, and I kept the house and the market stand. It was a small but significant victory. Meanwhile, I continued working at the market every day. I woke up at 4 a.m, prepared everything by myself, loaded the boxes into Uncle Joe's truck, who always refused to accept payment for transportation. I set up the stand, sold, took everything down at the end of the day, went home, prepared preserves for the next day, took care of the garden, the animals. It was a hard, exhausting life, but strangely gratifying. For the first time, I was in control, making my own decisions, directly reaping the fruits of my work. I was no longer Frank's shadow, the woman who stayed at home while the husband supported the family. I was Eleanor, the market vendor, the woman who had faced betrayal and abandonment and had rebuilt herself. Over time, I discovered I had a knack for business, better than Frank, actually. He had always been a decent salesman, but I noticed customers' needs, listened to what they said, adapted my production accordingly. I started making different preserves, experimenting with new seasonings, offering products that no one else had. I also started to make friends with other women at the market. Beth, from the spice stand, who had been the first to tell me the truth about Frank. Mrs. Wilson, from the cheese stand, a widow for 10 years who had been managing a business on her own since then. Marlene, who sold homemade sweets and was a single mother of 3 children. Strong women who faced life head-on, without depending on any man. About 6 months after I took over the stand, I heard news that spread through the town. Rose had left. They said she and Frank had fought, that his money had run out, the money from our land, actually, that she had found a richer merchant in the next town. I don't know if it was true, but I do know that a few weeks later Frank showed up at my door. He looked worn out, aged, his clothes rumpled, unshaven. Quite different from the always neat, proud man who had been my husband for 25 years. "Eleanor, can I come in? We need to talk." I let him in. I offered him coffee. Not out of kindness, but because I wanted to hear what he had to say. I wanted to see how far his audacity went. "Eleanor, I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. Rose wasn't what I thought. She just wanted my money, was just using me." I took a sip of coffee, observing him over the cup. "And what do you want me to do with this information, Frank?" He swallowed hard, looked away. "I was thinking, maybe we could try again for the sake of our children, our grandchildren. We're a family after all." I almost laughed in his face. Almost, but I controlled myself. "Frank, you sold our land behind my back, planned to abandon me, humiliated me in front of our son, our neighbors, the entire town. And now that your mistress has left you, that the money has run out, you want to come back? As if it were a detour on the path, a stop to rest before resuming the journey. I know I made a mistake, Ellie, but 25 years of marriage isn't something you throw away like that. That's exactly what you did, Frank. Threw it away. And you know what I discovered in these months? That I'm stronger than I thought. That I can manage our business better than you. That I can live alone without depending on you for anything." He stood up, his wounded pride evident in his red face. "You'll regret this, Eleanor. One day you'll realize what you lost." I stood up too, going to the door and opening it. "I already realized, Frank. I realized I lost 25 years believing I was worth less than you, that my work, my dreams were worth less. But that's over. This house is now mine. My life is mine. You can leave." When the door closed behind him, I didn't feel sadness, didn't feel anger. I felt a deep relief, as if I had left a heavy burden behind. I went back to the kitchen, picked up my recipe book, and began planning the preserves I would make for next week's market. A new recipe for pickled carrots with ginger that had come to my mind. This was my new world now. A world that I myself was building with my own hands. The following years were transformative. Like a flower that insists on growing in concrete, I found strength to flourish where I least expected. Gradually, my stand at the market became well known, not just in town, but in the region. My preserves, those colorful little jars of pickled carrots with ginger, peppers in honey sauce, eggplant in oil with rosemary, became a sort of trademark. In the summer of 1983, a year after the separation, I received an unexpected proposal. The owner of a small market in Chicago, who came to vacation in the region and always bought my preserves, wanted to know if I could produce in larger quantities to sell in the city. I was scared at first. How could I, a 44-year-old woman who had barely left the town where I was born, supply products to Chicago? But Tommy, my youngest, who was now graduating in accounting, encouraged me. "Mom, you can do it. I'll help with the numbers, the contracts." I remember the fear I felt that night. After the man left with the promise that I would think about the proposal, I sat on the porch, looking at the darkness of the yard, thinking about everything that would have to change. I would need more space for production, more help, more investment. Could I handle it? It was that night, looking at the stars that had always comforted me in difficult times, that I made a decision. I would never let fear paralyze me again. If I had survived the end of my marriage, betrayal, public humiliation, I could survive anything. The next day, I spoke with Beth and Marlene, my friends from the market. I explained the situation, the proposal I had received. To my surprise, they not only supported me, but suggested a partnership. "Eleanor, we could join forces," said Marlene, who, in addition to homemade sweets, had started making jellies. "I'll make the sweet jellies, you the savory preserves. Beth comes in with the special spices. We divide the work, the costs, the profit." That's how Farmstead Flavors was born, our small cooperative of artisanal products. At first, it was just the three of us working in our spare time after the market. We produced on a small scale in my kitchen, which I had specially renovated for this, with the money I had managed to save in the first year at the market. The success was greater than we expected. Soon, our preserves, jellies, and spices were in several markets in Chicago. At the beginning of 1984, we received a large order, bigger than the three of us could handle. That's when we had the idea to invite other women to join us. We started with Mrs. Wilson, the widow from the cheese stand, who began producing special cheeses for our brand. Then came Susan, my daughter, who, after separating from David, who never stopped drinking and cheating on her, returned to town with Melissa and needed work. She had a knack for drawing, so she became responsible for the labels, the visual part of the products. Soon, we were 10 women, all with similar stories. Women whom life had struck in some way, who had been abandoned, betrayed, underestimated, but who had found strength in each other. The house that had once been my cocoon, where I hid believing I was only good for being a wife and mother, turned into a small factory of dreams and new beginnings. Of course, we faced difficulties. There's always someone trying to knock down those who are trying to rise. In our case, it was the traditional merchants of the town, men who didn't like seeing a group of women prospering without needing them. They spread rumors about our products, tried to make transportation to Chicago difficult, even threatened some markets that bought from us. But for every door that closed, 2 opened. By 1985, our small cooperative already employed 15 women and had products in markets across 3 states. We had to rent a larger warehouse, buy equipment, regularize the company. It was a period of much work, of sleepless nights, of worries about money, taxes, competition, but it was also a time of discovery. I discovered I had a talent for business, for leading, for innovating. Things I would never have discovered if I had continued in Frank's shadow, believing that my place was just in the kitchen, serving him and the children. In 1987, we received an invitation to participate in an artisanal products fair in Chicago. It was the first time I would go to a big city. At 48, I got on a bus with Beth and Marlene carrying our suitcases full of samples and went to face this new challenge. The fair was a success. Our products attracted attention. We made important contacts. We returned with orders that guaranteed work for months. But the most important thing for me was the feeling of freedom, of being in the world, of seeing new places, of meeting different people, of being respected for my work, for my creativity, not for being Frank's wife. In the following years, our cooperative farmstead flavors continued to grow. In 1989, we bought the warehouse that we previously rented. In the same year, we opened our first little shop at the entrance of town to serve tourists who were beginning to discover our region. By 1990, there were 25 women working together, many of them heads of households like me, supporting children, paying for studies, building their own homes. It was also in 1990 that life brought me another surprise. At one of the artisanal product fairs that we regularly participated in, I met James. He was a university professor, a widower for 5 years, and was at the fair buying gifts for his daughters. He stopped at our stand, tried our preserves, praised the flavor, the presentation. We talked about spices, about old recipes that our grandmothers made. He told me he liked to cook, that after his wife died, he had to learn to feed his daughters. We exchanged stories, recipes, laughs. Before leaving, he bought several products and took one of our brochures with address and phone number. A week later, I received a call at the cooperative office. It was him asking if I would accept having coffee the next time I was in Chicago. I didn't know how to respond. At 51, after everything I had been through, the idea of getting involved with someone again seemed frightening. "Just coffee, Mrs. Sullivan, to talk more about that sourdough bread recipe you told me about." I ended up accepting. We met at a cafe near the university where he taught literature. We talked for hours, not just about recipes, but about books. He was surprised to learn that I was an avid reader, despite having studied little. About travels, he had visited several countries before getting married. About children, about losses, about new beginnings. When we said goodbye, he gave me a book as a gift, 100 Years of Solitude, by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. He said he thought I would like the story of that family, of the strong women who appear in the book. I was so touched that I almost cried right there in the middle of the street. No one in my entire life had ever given me a book as a present. Frank never understood my taste for reading. He thought it was a waste of time, something for people who had nothing better to do. I returned home that day with the book in my bag, as if carrying a treasure. In the following weeks, on days when work at the cooperative left me exhausted, I would take refuge in the story of the Buendias, lose myself in the magic of Macondo, and think of James, of his gentle way of speaking, of his attentive eyes that seemed truly interested in what I had to say. Our meetings became more frequent. When I went to Chicago for fairs or meetings with distributors, I always made time to have coffee with him. Sometimes he came to our town, said it was to buy our preserves, but always found a way to invite me for lunch, a walk. It was a slow, respectful, mature courtship. Different from everything I had experienced with Frank, James never tried to impress me with boasts, never tried to diminish me to make himself feel bigger. He never assumed he knew more or understood more just because he was a man. On the contrary, he always valued my experience, my practical intelligence, my knowledge about plants, about food, about life. In 1992, he asked me to marry him. I, a 53-year-old woman, grandmother of a 16-year-old teenager, a respected businesswoman in the region, blushed like a girl. I didn't expect that. I had gotten used to the idea that this part of my life, love, companionship, had been left behind with the failure of my marriage to Frank. "James, are you sure? I'm not a young woman anymore." He smiled in that calm way that was so characteristic of him. "Neither am I, Eleanor. I'm 58, with white hair, knees that ache when the weather's about to change, but I know what I want, and what I want is to spend the rest of my life with you." We got married in a simple ceremony, in my backyard, our yard now, just family and close friends. Melissa, at 16, helped me choose the dress. I opted for a light blue shade, no white. I was no longer a virginal bride, but a mature woman who knew what she wanted from life. Tommy was my best man along with Beth. James's daughters, already adults, were his maids of honor. Susan took care of the decoration with flowers from our own garden. Marlene made the cake. It was a simple celebration, joyful, without ostentation, but full of affection. I remember the moment I looked around and saw all those people gathered to celebrate our union. People who had supported me when everything seemed lost, who had believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I felt such a wave of gratitude that my eyes filled with tears. James, noticing my emotion, gently squeezed my hand. "Is everything okay, Eleanor?" I looked at him, at that gentle, cultured, respectful man who had entered my life when I least expected it, and smiled through tears. Everything is better than I ever imagined it could be. At that moment, surrounded by people I loved, hand in hand with a man who valued me for who I was, not for who he wanted me to be, I understood that life can be surprising, that sometimes you need to lose everything to find what really matters, that sometimes a door closes violently, so that we can see the open window beside it, through which enters the light that was always there waiting for us. The years with James were a gift I never expected to receive at my age. After so long believing that love was that suffocating and controlling feeling I lived with Frank, I discovered that it could be light like a summer breeze, comfortable like an old pair of slippers, nourishing like a hot soup on a cold day. In the first years of marriage, we divided our time between my town and Chicago, where he still taught. I continued leading the cooperative, which by 1995 already employed almost 40 women and had a branch in Indianapolis. James supported every step of this expansion, using his contacts at the university to help us with legal issues, marketing strategies, ideas for new products. In 1997, when he retired from the university, we decided to settle definitively in my town. We renovated the house, creating an office for him where he continued to write his academic articles, and a larger space for me where I could experiment with new recipes, test new products for the cooperative. It was during this time that we started traveling together. Small trips at first, a weekend at the beach, a week in the mountains, then more ambitious ones. In 2000, at 61, I took my first plane trip. We went to Italy, land of James's ancestors. I remember the fear I felt when the plane took off, his hand holding mine, firm but gentle. If a woman who started a company from scratch at 43 is afraid of a little plane, then I'm the Queen of England, he joked, making me laugh and forget the fear. In Italy, we visited small producers of olive oil, cheese, wine. I brought back ideas for new products, contacts for possible future exports, and mainly the certainty that it's never too late to see the world, to open yourself to new experiences. In the following years, we visited Spain, Portugal, France, always focusing on meeting local producers, learning traditional techniques, bringing inspiration for the cooperative. James, with his knowledge of languages and his ability to make friends with anyone, opened doors that I never imagined could open for a woman with little formal education like me. In 2002, our Farmstead Flavors Cooperative celebrated 20 years of existence. We organized a big party at the production warehouse with all the women who had been part of our history. Some still worked with us, others had followed other paths, opened their own businesses, moved to other cities. Seeing all those women gathered, some who had entered as shy young women and were now successful businesswomen, others who had arrived broken like me and had rebuilt themselves, it was one of the most emotional moments of my life. Beth, my friend of so many struggles, made a speech that made me cry like a child. Eleanor taught us that a woman doesn't need to ask permission to exist, to work, to dream, that we can be strong without ceasing to be feminine, that we can be businesswomen without ceasing to be mothers, grandmothers, wives, that each of us carries a strength that sometimes we don't even know exists until life forces us to find it. At that party, I looked back and realized how far we had come. Not just me, but all of us. How a painful betrayal had transformed into the kickoff of a silent revolution in our small town. How that innocent phrase from my granddaughter Melissa, "Why does Grandpa kiss the flower lady on the mouth?" had triggered a series of events that changed not just my life, but the lives of so many other women. Speaking of Melissa, she was another immense joy throughout all these years. After finishing high school with excellent grades, she got a scholarship to study law in Chicago. James helped her a lot with her studies, with books, with guidance about academic life. He became for her a kind of grandfather that Frank never managed to be. Present, attentive, genuinely interested in her achievements. In 2002, Melissa graduated. She was 26, beautiful, intelligent, determined. When I saw her go up on stage to receive her diploma, wearing the gown, I couldn't hold back tears. I thought of the 6-year-old girl who had unintentionally revealed a painful truth and changed the course of our family's history. After graduation, Melissa took the bar exam and passed. She went to work at a law firm not far from our town. She visited us whenever she could, on weekends, on holidays. She brought stories of her work, of the cases she handled, especially those involving women in vulnerable situations. "Grandma, did you know I tell your story to many women I help? Women who think there's no way out, who are trapped in abusive marriages, who believe they won't be able to support themselves. I tell them how you started over at 43, how you built everything from zero." Hearing this from my granddaughter, knowing that my story was helping other women find strength to start over, was one of the greatest satisfactions of my life. In 2005, Frank passed away. A massive heart attack while working on a construction site. After Rose left him, he went through hard times. He worked as a construction helper, lived in rented rooms, drank more than he should, tried a few more times to come back home, always with the same speech of repentance, always receiving the same negative response. When I learned of his death, I felt a confusing mixture of feelings. Sadness for the man I once loved, for the father of my children, anger for the lies, the betrayal, the disrespect, and also a kind of relief, as if a difficult chapter of my life had finally been closed for good. I went to the funeral, of course, brought flowers, prayed for his soul. James went with me, gave me support, respected my complex mourning for a man who had been so important and so destructive in my life. Once again, I was surprised by his ability to understand nuances, to respect contradictory feelings, to not judge. Life followed its course. In 2008, Melissa married a colleague from work, also a lawyer. A beautiful ceremony where she insisted that James and I have a place of honor. The following year, my first great-grandson was born, little Michael. Holding that little creature in my arms, seeing my granddaughter's face reflected in that baby, was like closing a circle. From the girl who had revealed her grandfather's betrayal was born the boy who brought the promise of a new generation, with different values, with other possibilities. In 2010, at 71, I decided to step back from the direct management of the cooperative. I didn't retire completely. I continued to develop recipes, to participate in important fairs, to give talks about female entrepreneurship, but I passed the baton of daily administration to a younger team, led by Susan, my daughter, who had become a competent executive after years working by my side. This gave me more time to enjoy life with James. We traveled more, read more, spent more time taking care of the garden we had created together in our backyard. A garden that mixed the useful and the pleasant, herbs for preserves, flowers to cheer the eyes, fruit trees for the visits of grandchildren and great-grandchildren. In 2015, we celebrated our 23rd wedding anniversary with a simple party in the backyard, surrounded by children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, longtime friends. James, always eloquent, made a toast that deeply moved me. To Eleanor, who taught me that true love is that which makes us grow, not diminish, who showed me that strength has nothing to do with muscles or height, but with the ability to rise after each fall, who gave me the honor of sharing the second half of my life, the better half. 5 years later, in 2020, James left us. Pancreatic cancer, one of those silent ones that when revealed are already too advanced. It was 6 months of struggle, hospitals, hopes that faded with each new exam. I stayed by his side until the last moment, holding his hand as he had held mine so many times when I was afraid, insecure, sad. In the last weeks when he was too weak to leave the bed, he asked me to read to him. I chose 100 Years of Solitude, the book he had given me as a gift at our first meeting 30 years earlier. I read until the last chapter, until the last page, until the last sentence. He departed serenely as he had lived, with a half-smile on his face, as if he had just heard a particularly good joke that only he understood. The pain of loss was immense, different from anything I had ever felt. It wasn't the angry and humiliating pain of Frank's betrayal, but a deep pain, an emptiness that seemed impossible to fill. For the first time in a long time, I felt lost, not knowing how to move forward. It was Melissa who helped me find my way again. My granddaughter, now a 44-year-old woman, a respected lawyer, mother of 3 children, came to spend some time with me after James passed away. "Grandma, you once told me that when Grandpa Frank left, you felt it was the end of the world, but it wasn't. It was the beginning of a new life. Now you're feeling the same thing, that it's the end of the world, but it's not. It's just a new beginning." She was right, of course. At 81, widowed for the second time, I still had a lot to offer, a lot to live. In the following months, I dedicated myself to organizing James's memories, academic articles, letters, travel diaries. I began to write my own memoirs, the history of the cooperative, the recipes I had developed over the years. In 2022, I published my first book, Flavors and Wisdom, the story of a woman who learned to live after 40, a mixture of autobiography and recipe book, where I told the trajectory of the cooperative interspersed with the stories of the women who were part of it. The book, to my surprise, was well received. I did book launches in various cities, gave interviews, participated in television programs. In one of those interviews, a young journalist asked me what had been the most difficult moment of my life. Many people would think it was when I discovered my first husband's betrayal, or when I lost my second, who was the love of my life. But no, the most difficult moment was when I had to decide whether to give in to pain and humiliation, or to use that pain as fuel to reinvent myself. Choosing the second path was the most difficult and also the most rewarding. Today, at 86, I look back and see a rich, full life that took directions I could never have imagined on that distant afternoon of 1982, when a 6-year-old girl said innocently that she had seen her grandfather kissing the flower lady. The cooperative I founded with my friends now employs more than 100 women, exports to several countries, is recognized for the quality of its products and for the social impact it generates. My children and grandchildren follow diverse paths, but all carry a bit of that strength I discovered in myself when I needed it most. I still live in the same house, taking care of the garden that James and I planted together, writing my memoirs, receiving visits from grandchildren, great-grandchildren, friends of so many years. It's not the life I dreamed of when I was young. It's much better than anything I could have dreamed. If I could go back in time and talk to that 43-year-old Eleanor, devastated by betrayal, humiliated, afraid of the future, I would say, don't be afraid. The pain you're feeling now will transform into strength. The tears will water the garden where more beautiful flowers will grow. Life hasn't ended. It's just truly beginning. This is the message I leave for you who are listening to me today. No matter what age you are, no matter what has happened in your life until now, as long as there is breath in your lungs, as long as your heart beats, there is the possibility of a new beginning, of reinvention, of a full life. That phrase that seemed to have destroyed my world, "Why does Grandpa kiss the flower lady on the mouth?" was, in fact, the key that opened the door to my liberation. Sometimes something needs to break completely so that we can build something new, stronger, more authentic. And that's how, my dears, that 6-year-old girl, without knowing, gave me the greatest gift anyone could give me. The chance to discover who I really was, what I was capable of, and how much love and joy there still was in the world for me. If you're going through a difficult moment right now, If you feel your world has collapsed, remember my story. Remember that I was 43, with little education, no experience working outside the home when I had to start over from scratch. And I not only survived, but flourished. You can too, believe me. And before I say goodbye, I'd like to ask you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling if you've ever gone through something similar in your life or if you know someone who has. Let's share our stories, our pains, and our victories, because that's how we strengthen each other, like links in a chain that doesn't break. Until the next video with another story from my long life. God bless you all.